I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put palms down. So, good morning, everybody. Good to see you all. I just want to take a moment, and all of us have some tremendous sympathetic joy for our neighbors because they're getting a new roof. So I just want you to allow that to sink in for a minute, how happy you are for them. That you're not actually here for meditation, you really came here to celebrate our neighbors getting a new roof. So just sit with that for a second. I'm happy for them. Normally, you don't look happy for them.
I'm very happy.
You're very happy for them, yes. Inside, yes. I was just totally misreading the expression on your face. So we're happy for them because they're getting something new, something exciting. I don't even know if it's a new roof. I just know they're doing roof work. So they're fixing, repairing, putting in new, who knows. But they're doing something that is going to make their life safer, healthier, better. For them. What does that mean for all of us? Noise. Oh, I want my quiet. They want no rain to go into their place, you know? So this is the practice. You know, for those of you who are maybe brand new or those who are here a lot, I don't even know how loud it's going to be. I have no idea. I just heard two things as I was doing my offering and decided I would talk on this. That this is our life. Is that we go through our days and we're often seeking, craving, desiring happiness and joy and comfort for ourselves. We came here to get quiet, to get peaceful, to listen to the Dharma, to learn about Buddhism, to whatever you want to call it. But most of us come here because we need something. And throughout our days and our lives, we're not always focused on what do others need and what do others want and what do others get. And when they do get what they need and what they want, do we actually take any time to appreciate and celebrate and be joyful for what they're getting? So as we start the meditation, which we will, again, I have no idea. I actually hope it's really loud because what I'm going to tell you to practice is every time you hear talking or some roof noise happening, just allow that to kind of settle in some appreciation and joy for others. Because they're getting something nice. And if you can begin to recognize that if you actually find joy and appreciation in others getting things, the thing that you seek and crave and desire so much, which is the silence and the quiet and the calm and the stillness, if you actually find joy and appreciation in others getting what they want all the time, you'll stop seeking, craving, and desiring everything you came here seeking, craving, and desiring. So this isn't actually just some trick to make you okay while they make noise. This is part of the practice, that the practice isn't for us. It's for them. That was perfect. So, and if you're sitting there maybe for the first time or brand new, I mean, if you've been around here with me a while, you get it. But if you're sitting here for the first time and you're like, I want to try this meditation, quiet, peaceful thing, and you're really like uncomfortable with what I'm talking about right now, then I promise you that's the best teaching you'll ever get, is learning to be comfortable with other people's joy and happiness and getting what they need and want, and surrendering some of the desired attachment and craving for us getting what we want, because it's not why we're here. So with that, we'll start a meditation practice. A couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. All right, you won't float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working? Is this not working? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. As I alluded to, you might hear a few sounds. This is life. Life is filled with chaos and sounds, and the practice of meditation is learning to get quiet within all of the sounds. So don't expect anything. You won't think nothing, right? Your mind's not going to shut off. You're just going to sit. You're going to breathe. Posture, you want to be comfortable. So if you're on the cushions, often helps sliding to the front third, pushing the stomach forward slightly, shoulders are relaxed, hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. On the benches or chairs, also sitting up straight, shoulders relaxed. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. It doesn't mean you're a bad meditator, it just means your leg hurts. So move as necessary and then return to stillness. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, you'll settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Going throughout the practice, you'll hear sounds. These are not distractions, not disruptions. Simply what's happening around us as we sit. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Gently guide the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments of the practice, just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sound, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, no one else to be. Everything beautiful, just as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind. Whatever you're sitting with at this moment has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, with the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external situation. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than anyone in this room, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us in this room, regardless of where we come from, or what we believe in, or where we think we're going, our whole life is filled with things that happen. We react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. Practice meditation is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way we responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. Meditation is not an escape as often people think it is. It's not closing your eyes and pretending you're sailing down a river and looking at all the birds and trees and flowers and thinking everything is grand. Life is filled with chaos, filled with noise. The practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all of that. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's simply learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, which is where we spend so much of our time, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? We spend so much time focused on trying to control things outside of us. And this practice is working on inside of us and controlling and changing our reaction to things that happen. But it's a practice. It takes patience, which this crowd I'm not worried about. I know how much patience you all have, so we're fine there. It takes a lot of patience, because if you haven't figured it out by now, the world doesn't work exactly how you want it to. People don't do exactly what you want them to. And your days typically never go how you hope they would. But somehow, miraculously, everyone in this room, I can't speak for anyone not in this room, but everyone in this room has survived. And we are here. We have an opportunity to become aware of what we think and what we say and what we do, and how that can impact our lives and the lives of those around us. And that's really the essence of this practice, becoming fully aware of everything you think, everything you say, and everything you do. And it sounds so simple, and in many ways it really is. That is just a practice of being aware. Now, if we spend our lives focused on what everybody else is doing, what everybody else is fixing, what everybody else is doing wrong, what everybody else is saying, what everyone else is thinking, then we're not spending too much time focusing on us. Now I get it, I know the whole problem is everybody else, it's not us. It's all their fault that they haven't done everything we wanted them to. But eventually you wake up and you realize life is never gonna go how you want it to. It's just gonna go. And you can either go along with it and enjoy the ride, no matter how crazy it might seem, no matter how miserable it might seem, no matter how joyful it might seem, or you can completely resist it and struggle with it and fight it and argue against it, which never really works anyways. It just ends you up here on a Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. And I speak for myself, that's how I got into this mess. Once you just kind of jump in and you go with things as they're happening, and you let go of trying to control so much, life gets simpler. But it really is a practice. And again, the patience is required. If you've been an angry, stressed out, pissed off person for 40 years, it's going to take more than 4 months to cut through that. You know? Right, Normal?
You're absolutely right.
Yes.
But Mike is not more than 40.
I was being nice, you know. 42. So I'd rather just stop there, and I don't have anything really specific to touch on right now, other than just opening up, as I always prefer, to just questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind. I can talk about roofing as well if you'd like. You let me know. Yeah, that was quick.
I'd just like to know if there is a difference between group meditation like this and meditating all by yourself. Are they both equally valuable, one more valuable than the other?
Sure.
Do you recommend one over the other?
Sure.
Just please talk about the difference.
Absolutely, great question. If you didn't hear, if I can talk about the difference in group meditation versus meditating by yourself, is one better than the other? Is there more benefits in one other than the other? Do you ever have lunch?
Yeah.
Yeah? Do you sometimes have lunch by yourself?
Yeah.
Do you sometimes have lunch with others?
Yeah.
Are they different?
Somewhat, yeah.
Are they both important?
Yes.
Are they both beneficial?
Yes.
Do you sometimes like the food more so than others?
Yes.
Have I answered your question?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's you know, and I don't know, when you were asking that question, that was just popping in my head, but in a very direct sense, even though I think that was pretty direct, is that often, I think it's first important to understand that when you meditate, whether you're by yourself, right, at home, or, you know, wherever you are, or in your car, or sitting on a curb, or staring at a wall, or whether you're with 1,000 people, there's one constant, and that's what? You. You are there. Now, your mind is going to be triggered and conditioned differently always. So sometimes sitting by yourself will be wonderful. Sometimes sitting by yourself will be miserable. Sometimes sitting with a group of people will be wonderful. Sometimes sitting with a group of people will be miserable. So I'm personally not a fan of this kind of idea that like there's, I think psychologically it works for a lot of people, but I'm just like Jeff, my unenlightened view is that I'm not a big fan of this idea that if you sit with more people, there's like a greater energy. It's just not my thing, right? That greater energy that you're feeling is being produced psychologically because you think that there's more people doing what you're doing and meditating. And so you give yourself, I feel, psychologically some power to that or some good feeling about that. But the reality is, you know, the 60 people or whatever, however many in this room right now, their mind was racing and they were thinking about as much nonsense over the last 20 minutes as you were, right? It's not like they were all in some deep meditative state and you were pulling off of their energy. They were thinking about lunch and what's going on next door and, you know, what happened to them when they were 6. You know, their minds were racing as much as yours was. sitting by yourself, say at home, is extremely beneficial because it's where you are a lot, right? So very practically, creating a space and time at home to sit is important because you can do it every single day. If you're always looking for a place to go with people to sit with, it kind of limits very often the frequency that you'll meditate, the amount of times that you'll meditate, right? Some downsides to at home, right? Are you at your desk right now with the computer? Could you turn a TV on right now from where you're sitting, right? All those things. Are you less likely to pull out your phone and start scrolling through a bunch of crap? Probably. So in a group, some of those things that would easily pull us away, we kind of set down. So that's one, I think, of the many beautiful benefits of sitting with a group. And there's endless lists that I could go into, but they're both different, both important. I don't think one is more important than the other. I think balance is critical. And when you need to go find this, a sacred, safe, quiet space that you feel comfortable, go somewhere, whether it's here or anywhere, I don't care. And when you just want to sit for 5 minutes or 20 minutes at home every single day, then sit there as well. Yeah. Does that help?
Yes, it helped very much. I mean, I think you nailed it, and I'm glad I asked the question. I liked your answer, Mom.
Thank you. I'm glad you asked it as well. Most often, other people are always thinking a question that somebody asks, so it's always important. So thank you. Other thoughts, questions, meditation, Buddhist practice?
What are the 3 bells? This is my first time. And
The 3 bells?
Mm-hmm.
So when you, the simplest way to sum this up is every Buddhist tradition, every Buddhist temple, every Buddhist country, every meditation space, they will all be different. Kind of like I alluded to earlier. You have 2,500 years of people doing practice at least within the Buddhist context, going from culture to culture to culture. And so there's so many differences that have been kind of passed along, right? And so with that being said, if you just think about it, the Buddha was born in India 500 years before Christ, right? But I don't know, 200 years after he dies, it goes south into Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia. 500-600 years later, it goes into China, Japan, Korea. 1,000 years after he dies, it goes into Tibet. About 100 plus years ago, it comes into the Europe, US, Canada, etc. And then somehow miraculously it ended up here. And through all that crazy journey, I'm some random dude up here hitting the bell 3 times. And the question is why, right? So the tradition that I come from, which is very much a Taiwanese, Pure Land, Chan, which is the Chinese word for Zen Buddhist practice, what I was taught is that every time you do a formal practice, and for me, it's in my mind, in my heart, and I do the offerings and the bowing, it's formal ritual, formal practice, even though I don't necessarily share it that way, you hit the bell 3 times, and the first one is to represent what's called the triple gem. And the triple gem is, the first one is the Buddha, the second one is the Dharma, and the third one is the Sangha. And so what you're basically giving rise to in the triple gem and taking refuge in it is, first we have to look at the word refuge. What does the word refuge mean to y'all? Just throw out some things. Safety, what else? Comfort, what else? Shelter. Anything else? So whatever refuge is, safety, comfort, shelter, protection, right? The word refuge means different things. In Buddhism, we say take refuge in the 3 jewels. The Buddha. So the Buddha died 2,500 years ago. He can't help you much anymore, right? He is long gone. But we're taking refuge in what's called bodhicitta or Buddha nature. And that the Buddha, who was alive, he was a human, he lived for 80 years and he died, he figured out how to end his suffering. So to me, that's very comforting to know that if some other random dude figured out how to suffer less, then this random dude can figure out how to suffer less. I'm all in, right? So I find comfort in that. The second one is the Dharma, and that's the teachings. It's what the Buddha taught, right? And these are things like, compassion, loving kindness, wisdom, generosity, gratitude, all the words we all learned since we were 5 years old and didn't do. But now that they're put in some Buddhist context, we're like, oh, that's cool. I want to do that stuff. It's just called being nice, but we had to go through our crazy journeys to end up here, to put it in another framework to make us actually listen. And again, I'm speaking for myself. And then the third one is Sangha, and that's the community. So the community of practitioners at the time of the Buddha, it was the Buddha and the disciples, the monks and nuns, and that was their Sangha. And they found safety, comfort, protection. They renounced kind of worldly pleasures and all their, their livelihood and families and all that. And they came together, and their Sangha, that was their community. Modern day Sangha is like this. It's any group of people coming together to do meditation, look at Buddha's teachings. I also look at Sangha, which to me is a form of practice. Anyone get challenged by family members? We have some family members here too, right? Your family members are your Sangha, right? Look at how nice everybody is. See, there you go. Sorry, you're stuck. Right. Look how nice people are to you when you're in a place like this, right? Now imagine if we were that nice to our family always. Imagine if we were that nice to people in traffic always. Imagine if we were that nice to people in line at the grocery store always, right? We come together in these places and we're like, oh, this is my Sangha and I love you and I join Palm. Nobody says that really, but, right? And you get this like all warm, fuzzy, namaste feeling, which is like nonsense, right? Because we're not really that nice all the time. There's a lot of like fakeness in this stuff, but at least we're trying. If you try that hard around everybody else, your life will be better, So Sangha in a formal sense, and in, I think, just an everyday practice sense. So again, those three bells, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, triple gem. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty common, kind of the three bells, pretty common throughout many Buddhist traditions, but there will also be variations of that. Yeah. So next time you go to a Buddhist temple and you hear them hitting the bell like 10 times, they're not doing it wrong. Don't raise your hand and like correct them. Other questions?
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Just in thinking about the benefits of meditating with a group, and this goes a little bit beyond that to the benefits of the Sangha and having a little bit of a Dharma talk, is that every time I leave, I swear I'm nicer to people that week. I do something, I go out of my way for people more, like a friend, whereas normally I'm just kind of like doing my own thing and caught up in my own stuff. And so it's like a reminder, and it's a little frustrating to me that I continue to need the reminder. Like I'm like, oh yeah, it's not just about me. But that is a benefit for sure that I have seen where I'm actually doing more for others by coming here.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, the idea that it is just a reminder, and it was Vicky years ago, who's been around Dharma Bumps probably 7-8 years, and she said she would come every Saturday simply for the reminder. Because the world out there, it's very easy to forget to just go be nice to people. It's very easy to get wrapped up in all the craziness. And we're not running around all day long with people always reminding us, hey, be nice, be nice, be nice. That's not how things work. Buddhist teachings, that's why they say it goes against the stream. It literally is going against the practice and teachings of what we typically do throughout our daily life. So, I hear you on like, well, I should know this by now, but you're going to be probably needing reminders, like all of us the rest of our lives, because there's so many conditions out there that are just instant triggers to frustrate us, irritate us, annoy us. And the reminders are, and that's, I think, part of, back to the question about the hitting the bell 3 times. To me, part of the Sangha, part of the community, and I didn't say this, is to really, it's an accountability. And so while I get it, there's nobody necessarily like calling you each day and asking you like, hey, were you nice today? But to me as a practitioner, like the one of the great, I think, pieces of Sangha is that it holds you accountable, I'm far from perfect, but knowing that I sit here day in and day out and I lead a community like this, it holds me accountable to try to be and behave and do half of the things I sit up here and talk about, right? And so I think the more that you continue to get engaged and involved in communities that are doing good stuff, they hold you accountable because, when you're kind of saying all this stuff. You know, it was like years ago. Ken St. Pierre, we did a precept ceremony at Dharma Bum Life. This was like 10 years ago, I think, 9 years ago. And we had just taken the 5 precepts, and I'll touch on them if necessary, but the 5 precepts are no lying, no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, and no intoxicants. And so we did this ceremony, you know, and it was a beautiful thing. And he came in like 2 days later and he was like, Jeff, I already broke all 5 precepts, you know? And the whole idea wasn't for him. And then he had this sense of guilt. And so when I talk about holding yourself accountable or Sangha holding you accountable, I don't mean it in a place of like feeling guilty, because we can talk about all these wonderful, lovely, gentle, kind things. And the day is still young, my friends. It's not even noon. And by 2 o'clock, you are going to be so far removed from what we're talking about right now. And so the practice isn't to like feel guilty for not doing those things. It's at least to be aware of like, wow, I was doing good things. I went to my Dharma talk. I went to my meditation. I did good things. Now I'm not doing good things again. But at least we're aware of that. You know, not the shame, not the pressure, not the guilt, not this, I have to be these perfect little Buddhas or Bodhisattvas. Just be you and try to be a little nicer every day, a little more forgiving every day, a little kinder every day, just a little bit. You know? Yeah. Yeah.
What are those 5 values that you mentioned?
The 5 what?
The 5 values that you just
Oh, I knew once I said that. Yeah, so thanks for asking.
What are the Buddhist teachings like?
Yeah. So when the Buddha taught, when the Sangha came together, and again, this is 2,500 years ago, they rolled out what I like to say precepts. And these are guidelines. I look at precepts before I get into it. Do you drive?
Yes.
You have a car, you drive, right?
No.
So, but you drive. You have a license? I'm just kidding.
I
You're 16? All right, so when you're driving, you come to a red light. What do?
stop.
Do you have to?
No, you don't have to.
You don't have to. What happens if you run the red light?
Might get pulled over.
Might get pulled over. What else?
You might not, and just keep on going.
You might not, just keep on going. What else?
Someone might honk their horn at you.
What else?
What are you looking for specifically?
No, I'm gonna keep going. That's the joy of sitting up here. You want to sit up here, you get to do this. Yeah. What's one more thing that could happen if you run the red light and other people are driving as well?
Well, you could get hit.
You could get hit. Man, you really come from you a lot.
Wait, what? I'm sorry.
You're all about you. This is your first time here, huh?
It's my second. But
Second, yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, I would hate for you to run a red light and get hit.
I remember I also drive the scooter. It's almost like.
Okay, I get that. But if you run the red light and you get hit, what does that also mean? Somebody else gets hit as well. I just wanted to clarify that. I don't think you're totally selfish. All right. So I look at precepts as red lights, right? They're not rules. They're not laws, right? You're not like going to hell if you violate one of them. They're guidelines that the Buddha set up when he put the Sangha together, and there were between 227 and 311 precepts, and they were meant to keep the community safe. Right, if you bring a whole bunch of people together and you're practicing and living together and you don't have some guidelines, you're in for a crazy, maddening time. So the precepts were put in place as something happened. Somebody did something, it wasn't beneficial to the community, it was harmful, and so a precept was created. And there's what's called the Vinaya. You can Google it, Vinaya, and you can read all the precepts, you can read why they're there, right? And so the first 5 that were taught, and this is really shared as a lay Buddhist when you take the precepts, the first 5 are, the first one is no lying, to refrain from lying, refrain from killing, refrain from stealing, refrain from sexual misconduct, and refrain from intoxicants. Right, so the first one, lying. You ever lie?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Do people get hurt?
Maybe. Yes.
Let me ask that question again. Do people get hurt when you
No,
lie?
they don't.
They don't get hurt?
No.
No, because you're such a good liar, you get away with it, right? How old are you?
I'm 23.
Dude, when we were 23, we would have been good buddies. If I was 23 when you were 23, we would have been running lights all day long. Getting away with it, lying to people. I love the way you answered the questions because you quickly went to get away with it, right?
Yeah.
That's a common theme in your mind,
Yeah.
getting away with things, you know?
Thank you for that.
It's like I'm looking at the 23-year-old me, that's why, right? and you're having a lot of fun, I'm sure. So the lying hurts ourselves, it hurts others, right? The killing, right? And I'm not talking about just drastic murder, right? Everything from animals, right? From insects, cockroaches, ants, all that stuff. Like, to kill brings harm. And so the idea of the practice is to not harm anything or anyone. But we can also kill people's time, we can kill their spirit, we can kill their energy, we can kill their excitement, we can kill a lot of things. So bringing harm to others really is what the second one is about, to not cause harm, to not cause pain. And our actions really lead to either causing harm or not causing harm, right? So no lying, no killing, refrain from killing or harming, no stealing, right? I'm sure you've never stolen anything, yeah, liar. So the killing, the stealing, right? To take what's not ours, right? Let people have their stuff. Don't take what's not ours. Also, same thing. I think we steal a lot from people emotionally and spiritually. We take people's happiness. We take people's joy, right? So the stealing. The next one is sexual misconduct, right? Any sort of interactions or behaviors that so to clarify this, the Buddha was a monk. And in most Buddhist tradition, monks and nuns are celibate, so they don't have sexual interactions with other beings, right? There are millions of lay Buddhists, right, all over the world. And they are married, and they have sex, and they have families, and they have relationships and boyfriends and girlfriends and all that kind of stuff. So Buddhism doesn't mean you can't do all that. It's just understanding what is the intention behind it, right? Have you ever gone out and tried to actually meet somebody with something in mind that wasn't just because they were like the most important love of your life? Okay, so that would be a little bit of a sexual misconduct, putting ourselves in situations to cause harm towards others through those actions, right? So anything that is not in a loving, committed relationship, where both people understand where they're coming from, would be considered misconduct. And the last one is no intoxicants, right? Ever had a beer?
Yes.
Ever had 10 beers? Ever done anything really smart after 10 beers? No, right? One beer, not so bad, leads to 10, not too smart, right? So the intoxicants is anything that alters state of mind. So if the whole purpose of this practice is to kind of wake up to explore, why am I suffering? Why am I bringing suffering to others? Why is the world around me in so much chaos? If we look at how we cloud our mind and cloud our judgment, it's really hard to wake up to the present moment when we're totally drunk or totally high. Right? I lead this talk a few times a year with college kids at San Diego State, and about 50 of them. You know how fun it is to explore lying, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and no intoxicants with college kids? It's fascinating, right? Their defense always was around the marijuana being natural. Now their defense is around it being legal, but it still comes back to like, how clear is your mind? And that's what the practice is about. Right? So it's not about debating, is it good or bad for you? What are the benefits or lack of benefits? Most of us, if you drink a bunch of stuff and take lots of drugs, good stuff doesn't come from it. So those are the 5 precepts. Make sense? Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And again, that's why I kind of joke about, when Ken said, I broke all 5 precepts in a day. And it was really just to explore like, well, you're not like, it's not over. It's an awareness that these things bring harm to self and bring harm to others. And if we do them less, we'll be better off. Yeah. I also think it's important when we look at precepts to explore that these aren't things that I feel as a practitioner in the way it was taught to me that you should force into your life if and when you're not ready for it. Right? It's not about doing these things out of pressure or out of guilt or out of obligation. Right? That you do these things or you add these things or you remove these things from your life when you feel you're ready to do it. And at the same time, I heard Alex one time years ago say something about when you actually practice and you look at meditation and what the Buddha was teaching and you continue to work on that, you don't want to do any of those things. So they kind of naturally over time go away on their own. But when I say over time, that could be 5 minutes, and that could be 100 years. So, yeah. Anything else before we close? We'll do two. Last, yeah, go ahead.
When you're first starting to practice, are there certain basic things you should be mindful of, and certain pitfalls that a lot of people fall into when you're first starting?
Man, it's a great question. The first few quick things that come to my mind, I would actually, my response, even if you hadn't phrased it the way, I would be mindful of the pitfalls. So instead of being mindful of the things you should do, I would be mindful of the things you shouldn't do. And let me touch on a few of those. Don't set an expectation for it. Don't set a judgment. Don't set a time frame. Don't say, well, I've been at this 6 weeks. How come my life hasn't changed yet, right? Don't judge yourself during the practice. Don't think, am I getting better at this yet, right? I also, how new are you to this? Is this like day one? Yeah, beautiful, phenomenal. That's the most fun. So about, let's say you stay at this on and off for the next like 3-4 weeks. And all of a sudden you're listening to different people who talk about Buddhism, tell you how to be nice and kind and compassionate, and you get all motivated and inspired and you go do nice and compassionate things for the next 3 weeks. You might have a tendency to look at the people that you've been around and know and love who aren't being nice and compassionate, and you might start judging and critiquing them when they're actually doing the same thing you were doing yesterday or this morning. Does that make sense? So I call that Buddhist arrogance, or kind of Buddhist entitlement, where we think like, oh, I'm so Buddhist, so holier than thou. I talk about compassion, I meditate, how dare you do anything wrong, you know? So be patient as far as what you can do. Be really patient with yourself as you begin to work on cultivating meditation, cultivating kindness towards self and others. It takes time. We're used to our whole lives, you know, we go to school, kindergarten, first grade, high school, whatever, college. We're always like succeeding as to levels. And I look at this as you're starting over every day, every moment. So be patient with it. And, you know, in 5 years, ask that question again. Does that help? Yeah. And then one more here, we'll wrap up.
I know someone who, like, speaking of the intoxication,
Yeah.
I know someone who meditates, you know, very not like religiously,
Yeah.
frequently. They're very sober in their lifestyle, but one thing they do sometimes do when they meditate is they'll take psychedelic mushrooms,
Right.
and they say that it brings them to like a new understanding of themselves.
Mhm.
Do you think that that has benefits, or is that like another?
Yeah, again, there's a longer question. I'm going to try to sum it up because the church bells were ringing. The question was about someone that you know who meditates frequently and is sober, as you say, but sometimes when they meditate, they take psychedelics, and they say that it helps them get to know themselves. It helps them to get to know themselves while they're on psychedelic drugs. But chances are they're not going to spend their entire life using, hopefully, psychedelic drugs, because those things destroy you. They ruin your mind, they ruin your body, they ruin your relationship to ultimate reality, to the truth. It alters your state of mind, and it's very clear that we have this, especially at a young age. Again, this is like a 45-minute dialogue with college kids 4 times a year, you know? And my effort is not to convince people to stop doing whatever they're doing, but to recognize that this right here, to me, is like a crazy psychedelic experiment. Like, this is ridiculous that all these people are here right now. This is like one huge drug trip that all of us have lived our entire crazy lives from all over the world. And somehow on a Saturday morning from 11 to 12, we're all sitting here. That is insane. That is the present moment. So I've done just about everything out there. I get it. I understand it. And I don't buy it. I'm just not a fan of the logic that says the psychedelics help me get to know myself. They actually take you really far away from the present, and they do really weird things to your brain that I don't find beneficial at all, to be very direct, you know? Yeah, so we'll close on that. We'll join palms. Oh, and I've always thought that way. It has nothing to do with like the precept thing. It's not like the precepts were like, oh, I'm going to shift it. I've always felt that way. So it's more of just a Jeff personal thing. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most.